security guard who had a degree in another land.
Here's to the bus driver, the Turkish Sufi who almost danced when I shouted Rumi.
Here's to the manicurist who had to leave her homeland and her family to scrub the feet and paint the wonderful nails of strangers.
Here's to the harvesters who live in fear of being deported, who come here to open roads for their future generations.
Here's to the lunch ladies who do not speak a lick of English, and despite of it all, carry on.
Here's to the taxi drivers from Nigeria, Ghana, Egypt, and India who talk amongst themselves.
Here's to my father, who for many years worked in Sacramento for white, Vinci engineer men, and was never credited for the blueprints he created for them.
Here's to them calling home at 4 a.m. just to hear the voices of their loved ones.
cause themselves with their parents, and then suddenly they're pulled away from their parents. Why is the government doing this?
Because it's the law, and that's what the law states. And the law
Parents don't have to do that.
it doesn't have to be.
No llores. Vas a llegar por... Mira, ella te va a explicar y te va a ayudar.
Un par de ojitos negros, cielito lindo de contrabando. Ay, 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 anda y no llores, porque cantando se alegra. Cielito lindo.
Amiga, ¿cómo estás? ¿Dónde estás que no me contestas? Ya llegamos, nomás que nos estamos muriendo de hambre. Debemos de comer, ¿ok? Bye. Ay, mira, ¿cómo estás? Te adoro. ¿No?
Él era arquitecto y que no nos iba a realizar y a decirle lo que estaba bien, lo que estaba mal. Y el caso es que se subió para arriba y acababan de echar un lavado, habían hecho una tanda de cemento allá arriba, un bordadero así, y no se dio cuenta y se subió y pasó por allí. Después por ahí y se cayó.
Ya llegamos, nomás que nos estamos muriendo de hambre.
Entonces, doña Julieta tenía 2 años papás de los abuelitos de mí andaban buscando firma y andaban buscando, arreglando papeles para quitarle el niño a doña Lupita, porque ya se le había muerto uno y ya se había muerto el papá, y ellos querían quitarle al niño, que era don Herminio, y don Herminio estaba chiquito, como de unos 2 o 3 años, estaba don Herminio chiquito. Entonces yo veía
¿Cómo estás?
cómo se veía.
Ya lo agarro.
Entonces dice que en la noche puso una sábana, le echó ropa del niño, echó quita de ella, así, y ya ves esa mañana de noche que la luz estaba agarrada del suelo agarrado, vivía cerca del suelo, y vivía, y cogió el hacho de ropa, y cogió al niño, y agarró también agarrada de ordenado. Se metió ella cuando ella iba llegando allá, que le dijo un soldado, nada, arriba. Entonces ella soltó el hacho así, y se puso así, y cogió y al niño también. Entonces, ¿qué pasó?
Mira, ¿cómo estás? Ya lo agarro.
Apuntar
Cambio. ¿Qué tal un cuarteto?
Ah, yes, a quartet.
¿Qué tal unos tacos de carne asada?
Suena bien.
Mija, usted no come carnitas.
No eres
Así
vegan?
era.
Maybe not that.
Okay, okay.
Pero eso de la comida me suena bien. como
Eso
que-
está buena idea.
I do like the food idea.
Food?
Okay.
Something with
Food
food.
involved in it.
Yes.
Una línea de tamales.
Una línea
Eso,
de tamales.
eso me lo
Está
Muy
bien,
bien.
vámonos, ¿no?
A ver,
Vamos.
embarro la masa.
Empezamos por
La
allá.
masa, te la paso.
Yo le pongo la carnita, pero
Excelente.
vegetales,
Está bien, está bien.
Pero yo la voy a mover así súper rápido, súper rápido, luego se la voy a pasar.
Y lo voy a poner aquí porque no sé qué hacer.
Échale. ¿Envuelto?
Más rápido, más rápido.
A little
¿no?
faster, a little faster.
Yes, with levels maybe, yes.
Suave, rico,
Correcto.
Okay. Con esa cancioncita.
Oye, espérame, ¿vuelo algo? Se quemaron los pinches frijoles. Vámonos con eso. ¡Aguante!
Ya. Como que no me suena.
No, la verdad está funcionando.
Mejor Juan Gabriel en concierto.
Eso, mire.
Yes, yes.
Échala de querida.
Ahí vamos, sí, una. Y...
No.
Querida.
Cuando
No.
tú quieras Ese tampoco.
Esa no está buena.
Sorry, San Francisco.
La de querida juntos, la de querida juntos.
Ahí está,
Espera,
bien.
la de querida juntos, ahí va.
Uno, dos, tres.
Querida, taran, taran, tan, tan. Dime cuando tú, dime cuando tú, dime cuando tú vas a volver. Ah, ah. Dime cuando tú, dime cuando tú, dime cuando tú vas a volver. Esa me gusta.
Oigan, ¿qué pasa si nos paramos por allá? But we really spread out this time.
Ah, es algo nuevo.
Algo que nunca jamás se ha visto en la historia de la danza. Never? Except for that one time we performed it in LA.
En LA.
okay.
This is not LA. But don't tell them. All right. Haz un poquito más para allá, yo acá. ¿Listos? Okay, sí. I'm going to start with the stomp.
Pero un respiro.
Serious.
Okay, just a little moment to breathe. Okay. But the stomp is okay?
Ya,
Okay, all right.
Wait, I'm not ready.
Ok, mejor. Good. ¿Listos?
Sí.
Así van.
Café.
Con pan. Dale. Sigo yo. Dale. No, pónganse ahí. Ahí, perdón, mejor. Dale. Así. Aquí.
Ahí vamos.
Ready?
Here we go.
Una quebradita.
No, espérame, a little break. Oh, that kind of break. Okay, hold on.
How are you in San Francisco?
Ab workout?
Ab workout.
All right, here we go. Ahí voy. Bájate.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
8. Agáchate.
Dale.
Yankee Doodle went to town.
Where'd he go, girl?
You know where he went, riding on this pony. Tu pony, mi pony, nuestro pony.
El tuyo también.
Your pony.
Oye, chulo, también el tuyo.
El tuyo también.
You get one.
We all get
Everybody gets a pony. Everybody gets a pony. Listo. Okay.
Dale.
Cambio.
Megan Chestnut, expert holiday decorator, suggests that for Cinco de Mayo, you buy a sombrero. This sombrero should be festive. Something that says, I'm not Mexican, but I'm gonna celebrate this holiday anyways. We have the perfect one right here.
We sure do.
Yeah. You're also gonna go ahead and buy some Tostitos chips from your local grocery store. You wanna make sure to get the scooping kind. You want your guests to be able to scoop with one hand and drink an expensive margarita with the other. Ooh. Not now. You're also gonna go ahead and buy some salsa. Salsa! Racata! Racata! Go get that bottle of salsa, girl. You're gonna go ahead and purchase that salsa and walk it ever so sexually over to your makeshift bowl. For purposes of timing today, we're gonna go ahead and make that bowl right now. Ha! Gorgeous. We're gonna go ahead, pop your Tostitos open, or a recycled bag of Tostitos.
Claro.
And go ahead and fill the rim of the hat all the way around. Make sure it's bountiful. Let it overflow. Make sure you got money.
Whoa!
Yeah. You're also gonna go ahead and buy that salsa, open it up, maybe way more sexually than that, and pour it into your makeshift bowl.
Dale.
Oh. Whoa. Whoa. And Megan Chestnut says, oh my gosh, isn't that beautiful?
Ay, pero qué bello.
Shut up! And you're ready for your Cinco de Drinko!
Delicioso!
This is serious music we are dealing with here. Only serious music.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this iteration of the Open Diversity Festival here at Saddleback College. My name is Steve Rosa. I'm a professor in the dance department, and I'm very excited and eager and giddy to introduce to you Irvin Manuel Gonzalez, who is a visiting professor at Florida State University, a lecturer at Cal State San Marcos, and has a very, very vast CV that we're going to get into. But welcome, Irvin. Thank you for taking the time to speak with me and offer your energy for us today.
No, muchísimas gracias, Steve. Thank you so much for having me here. It's I feel like when you first asked me if I was like, you know, down to have a little plática, a little talk, I was super excited just because I love talking about like my research and like the cool things that I've gotten to sort of dive into over these past few years. So thank you for having me here. Yeah,
let's just go right in. I mean, we could talk for hours. Let's just be real. So let's just dive right in. You recently completed, round of applause, and earned your PhD at UC Riverside in dance. So can you speak a little more to that?
Yes, definitely. So I have now the honor, the privilege, right? I never in my wildest dreams as a little mestizo kid growing up think that I would get to be called Dr. Gonzalez, right? I got my PhD officially actually just like got emailed to me this probably like 2 weeks ago. And I did a program for it was about like 7-ish years at UC Riverside Critical Dance Studies program. I sort of dived into it because as an undergrad, I had completed degrees in English and dance. And so sort of coming out of undergrad, I was really sort of in limbo, in a liminal state, trying to figure out like where I was going to go. But with all of that, I actually first wanted to go to law school. And so I was going to be like a little abogado, a little lawyer. And so then I did an internship and doing the internship sort of showed me that I didn't think that was the route that I wanted to go. So I ended up applying to different programs for English. And finally, I was just like, how is it that I can mix my two passions of dance and writing into one thing? And so then the Critical Dance Studies program at UC Riverside sort of offered that opportunity to research dance and talk about it theoretically, but also get to write about it, right? So get to sort of mix some of my passion of writing with this aspect of dance that I sort of came to love in college.
Beautiful. So your research specifically revolves around what?
So my research, yes, it revolves around Quebradita dancing, right? Which is a Mexican and Mexican-American social dance form and something that I grew up with. And it became sort of very clear to me early on in academia, in higher ed, right? That I wanted to provide more visibility to a lot of the culture that I grew up in, right? I initially thought that I should do sort of research on postmodern dancing because I was like, oh, like everyone else around me is sort of doing ballet or they're doing this and that, right? And when I had gone to previous conferences, that's what people sort of brought to the game. So I was like, this is I guess what I'm supposed to do. But then clearly, as soon as I found out that like, I was just like, my passion actually lies over here in this other area, right? That I've actually come to know because that's part of like who I am. And so bringing and shedding light on Quebradita was a way to do that, right? So I was really enamored with the ways in which Quebradita sort of was this hybridization of different aesthetics coming together and how information flowed across the US-Mexico border between dancers and how dancers cultivated friendships and amistades and kinship networks and circuits of competition. So then slowly I dived into that, right? And so that's what my dissertation finally explored, right? It was sort of the connectivity that dancers had across borders through Quebradita dancing, right?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, that's something that I know for me personally, I value highly and I hold close to my heart is this sense of community that we foster within different forms that come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different life practices. And, you know, I've studied West African dance for quite some time now. And I have like my community that I connect with, like my community that has helped me heal and, you know, seguir adelante to like keep going forward and really ground myself, connect and expand my dancing body. right? So I think that's something that's really beautiful with like the work that you're doing and a lot of other folks around us is like our dancing body, like the vernacular of that, like the language that we're speaking with our kinetic energy is different. It's different than what we were trained in community colleges, undergrad, four-year universities, and maybe even doctoral programs. So, you know, there's a lot of emphasis on certain dance styles, or there was, especially when I started back. I started my dance training in 2004. So I don't know if my dance training in an academic institution, I should specify. Yeah. And back then it was a different lens and a different way of training the dancing body. And I feel like there has been a shift within the last few years, especially since I graduated from grad school, but also seeing the work that's being produced now by a lot of artists. There's a shift in how we're addressing how we move our body and connecting to these forms that identify within our lifestyles in a different way. So I feel like Quebradita, even though I'm Salvadorian, I'm Central American, Quebradita's from Mexico. I've definitely seen it. I partake in, I faked it till I made it at a couple quinceañeras, weddings, you know, all that good stuff. I just follow and keep going. But definitely the sense of community, I think, is really beautiful. But, you know, at Saddleback, as a campus, and especially within our division of fine arts, music, and television, we are we are really pushing forward this idea of like these notions of equity and diversity. What does that mean? Both as how we're teaching, but also what our students are producing. What critical work are they looking into? What artists inspire them? What artists might be problematic? And having that conversation and engaging. Can you speak a little bit more to that? Like your journey as a student, maybe, or even now as an educator, where you find maybe issues with like, you know what, this lacks some equity. This lacks some diversity. Yeah, just speaking to that generally.
Definitely. Yeah, and I feel like that is sort of like these perspectives emerge for you growing up as sort of a like marginalized body, right? That you quickly come to learn that in certain spaces, right? You exist differently than in other spaces. And so I've always sort of said that growing up as like a child of like parents who migrated from Mexico, that you automatically sort of grow up with a sense of advocacy, right? And you also, just because, you know, from a young age, you're there at the bank, like making a phone call for your mom because, you know, she can't speak English. And so you're like translating, right?
That part, absolutely. And
so quickly you sort of learn about your difference in, you know, a variety of ways, right? It happens sometimes in a beautiful manner, and sometimes it happens in a very sort of violent or negative manner as well, right? And so because of that, you sort of quickly grow up understanding the need for your presence to sort of be like matter in different ways, right? And so that's why I think it's always important to sort of recognize you know, diversity as an important factor in recognizing these differences, but then equity and recognizing the different ways in which these differences have different needs too, right? That there's sort of a subsection of that, right? That it's not, I always sort of think of sometimes diversity as like, Jeff Chang in his book Who We Be has a sort of beautiful sort of summarization of that, where it's just kind of like this Gap campaign and like Gap clothing, right? And so it has people from different races in the Gap campaign, but they're all wearing the exact same Gap sweater, right? So diversity is showing that those differences, but they're all wearing the exact same thing, versus something that can be a bit more diverse than that, or even more even more equitable than that, where it's just like different bodies wearing different things because they need different things as well, right? And that representation comes in different lenses, different pathways. And so yeah, I think it's about that, and also realizing that it's not always about us wanting a seat at the table, right? But it's about like shaking the table and actually getting rid of that table and then creating a new table, right? Because sometimes the resources that are already in place aren't what you know, different bodies needs and different identities need, but that we actually need something else, right? Something completely brand new, and that we can dream that and imagine it and slowly constructed as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. Do you have any specific like instances in like your training or your experience within the dance world, either in academia or outside of academia, so within your own creative process, where like you had like an acute moment where you were like, you know what, I need to get rid of the table. I need to turn this on its head. I need to empezar de nuevo, start anew and just and rebuild.
Yes, yeah, for sure. I think growing up, particularly as so I came into dance later on in life, right? In terms
Same.
of like academic training, or
Same.
more of a sort of training in modern contemporary and ballet. Because I always, to this day, when somebody asks like, when did you start dancing? When did you start training? Right? I always say like my first teachers were my tios and my tias, right?
Yes.
Cumbia on the dance floor, right? I still remember to this day, like my tia from Guatemala grabbing my two little hands and I'm like having me like mimic her feet, right? So that is like, my dance training right there.
Love that.
And then from there, eventually kind of making my way to college, right? And I was fortunate enough to go to UC Riverside, right, where, an audition wasn't required. And so then I got to that just opened the doors for me in different ways. But at the same time too, once I sort of would leave certain spaces and enter other spaces, I realized like, oh, I was either the token body or like the body that stood out in a different way, right? Because I didn't have the exact same access to training. I was also sort of this Mexican American kid, right, trying to dance in white spaces sometimes. And particularly, right, those experiences allowed me to realize like that new perspectives matter, and that new approaches to dance making matters, and that just BIPOC bodies, QT BIPOC bodies matter as well, right? Because we need these perspectives to also just like shake up dance. Because at the same time, while dance is beautiful and expressive and allows for all of these imaginative ways of creating art, that at the same time it can also be marginalizing as well, right? It's still sort of very Eurocentric. It's still very within academia at least, right? And it's still very sort of governed by even just like white male choreographers. And so I was interested in sort of flipping that script within academia, particularly once I started entering my PhD and I became more aware of the need for this to sort of happen, because I was just like, oh, there's like, people talking about Martha Graham here, and then people talking about Martha Graham here, and people talking about Martha Graham here. But then I never really heard of just like other things aside from Martha Graham and modern contemporary, right? I didn't hear about like pioneers of like salsa. I didn't hear about, pioneers of cumbia, or like the intricacies of cumbia going from Colombia and making its way to all the Latin American states. So then it also performing out in Los Angeles too, and like more of a contemporary dance scene, right? Modern contemporary, that I realized too that I was just like, oh, and engaging postmodern aesthetics, I was like, sometimes these spaces are very sort of blank. They want bodies to be blank slates, right? So that audience can put meaning onto them, right? But some bodies don't come with that blank slate, right? Or some bodies don't desire to have that blank slate. So then that's why I was just like, oh, okay, it's important for me to actually, when I go create art, that I visualize like my aunts and uncles who taught me to dance on the dance floor, right? How is it that way I can bring that forward? And then that eventually gets me to sort of get together with Primera Generación Dance Collective, right?
Yeah. Oh, there's so much there. Okay, so like you had mentioned, the bodies in a space, the performing bodies, the learning bodies, the kinetic bodies, the dancing bodies. And one thing that I leaned into as an educator, and I tell my students this all the time, is like, do not move like me. Move like your body moves.
Yeah.
I will give you the technique, which technique referring to how one engages their body within time and space, right? For me, I will give you the technique, and then from there, you use your own facility and do the beauty that is your own movement. Also, when it comes to like choreography and performances, my mentor, Maha Afra, who's the chair at Cypress College, she, ever since I started working with her back in when I was a wee little dance baby at 18, but one thing I picked up from her early on, I noticed that her as a choreographer, she would always adapt the movement to the dancers that she had in the moment, in the piece, for that semester, for that concert, versus other choreographers who I personally work with, who are constantly pushing you to fit your body into a mold that does not work, right? Me being my physique, I'm a bigger person. And I love that about myself. Trust me, I love my bigness, but I have flat feet, size 13 flat feet, right? So like I've had some very negative experiences within the dance world because of just those two things. But then working alongside my mentor and also other folks like you, and also myself developing my voice as a choreographer and an artist, I've been able to really see the importance in allowing individuals to be just that, right? Be yourself when you're performing, lean into your culture, lean into what it is that makes you you, and allow that to speak while you're on stage, which for me is one of the, like those aha moments. I'm an emotional person. So almost every opening night when I'm watching the dancers on stage, I'm like crying in the wing or from the booth, or because I'm so proud, and also just to see them do the thing, you know, just go and do and live. And whether the piece is something that's really eccentric and bright and colorful, which I love to do, or if it's a serious piece or, you know, a conceptual piece, whatever it may be, seeing the dancers let loose and do what they can with what I give them is one of the biggest gifts I can ever get. Yeah,
that's excellent. I feel like you like continuously sort of spark the other little sort of facets that are going on in my cabecita, in my head, right? Because I've also sort of been continuously reflecting on just like pedagogy, right, and the ways that we teach, right? Because I think like even going to just like a department that didn't require us to audition and was a little bit more allowed us a lot of bit more free expression, still sometimes did not have those tools to like cater to Black and brown students, right? That we were sort of being prepared as dancing bodies, but dancing bodies like capital D sometimes, right? In terms of like just like a more when that's attached to more Eurocentric values, right? And so there was times where I was just like my body doesn't learn like that. And, you know, it was times that were being like, well, you should be getting this because, you know, you like, it doesn't take that long to get this. And it's just like, damn, but like I'm coming into dance later on in life, right? Because while I wanted to dance growing up, like I had parents who couldn't access the dance studio, right? We didn't have the money. I was also like cis male identifying child. So because of that, like my parents were like, in a Mexican traditional household, they were like, you don't dance, like that is not for you, right? And so I was battling that, right? And then also the language barrier, right? That there were times where my mom was like, well, maybe, you know, we can squeeze it by, sneak it by, but like there was a language barrier between us and the studio, right? That maybe I could have translated at that point, but my mom also had a fear of entering certain spaces because, you know, she didn't speak the language. And so it was all of that mixed together. And on top of that, like part of my sort of contemporary, modern contemporary dance training actually started in my garage, where I like was teaching myself on YouTube. It was like the advent of YouTube, where it was first coming out, and I would just grab it, like go into the garage, like clear out some stuff and just like dance in there. And that's how I taught myself, right? So because I was coming from this lineage of learning to dance in specific ways later on in life, that when I was in the studio, like I couldn't grasp anything as some professors wanted me to, right? They were just like, it'd be like, we should already be knowing this. And it was just like, yeah, but I don't know this already, right? And I'm barely learning some of the language. They would, you know, throw out terminology, and I was just like, yeah, I think maybe that means that because you like a plie means that because you are bending your knees, and yeah, okay, I get it now, but I didn't come in knowing what a plie meant, right? And so how do we also provide equity, right, in that, where some students are coming in and you're just like, we can't just throw out plie the first day of school because like you think that people should already know what a plie means.
Yes, and not only that, sorry to cut you off, but not only that, taking that a little further for me in my like practice as an educator is plie doesn't serve my class in African or in Latin. So if I'm teaching a Latin class, plie comes from ballet, plie comes from that form, that Eurocentric form, where I'm teaching, you know, Latin dance. A lot of them come from, you know, Cuba, and the African diaspora. So plie just, it doesn't serve that form, in my opinion. So I recently made this change. I don't use certain terminology. Instead, I'll say bend your knees, or instead of turning out, put your toes to the diagonal of the room or the corners of the room or your own personal diagonal, and make sure your knees are tracking over your toes. You know, obviously we got to protect these beautiful bodies we got. So, and I feel like that also goes hand in hand with like what you mentioned, equity. So if I have a student who comes in who has never taken any kind of formal training or hasn't been able to go to a studio or something prior to entering my class, they will be a little more comfortable, because I remember that little twinge that I used to feel when I was like, oh, I don't know what they're talking about. In my early dance training days, I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what, and it's not all ballet terminology, but also like other movements, turns, things like that. I don't know what, and being able to remove these labels and giving it more access, I think is really important.
Very true. On board for that, right? And just also just like, shaking stuff up too, in that sense of like, even in my even when I am teaching modern contemporary, right? Like sometimes I'm like, let's even throw that language out, right? Like, yes, like plie and first position, second position belongs in this classroom, but sometimes it's like, away with that. I'm gonna throw in some Spanish words. I'm gonna throw in some of this and that. Just like, completely like turn it on its head, right? Because I feel like that's also the beauty of dancing, right? We're constantly, as dancers, allowing ourselves to turn things on their heads, right?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, that's the beauty of dancers, of artists. Like, that's what we do. That's what artists have always done. We look at something, we challenge it, we redefine it, we turn it on its head, we let it marinate, we chew it up, spit it out.
We throw some bitter on it. Yeah, we let it, we do a little ropa vieja with it. We like...
some cafecito, some pan, some sweet bread, and yes, we're living with that. I love that. Well, kind of transitioning, for me, that's what Primera Generación Dance Collective, right? The first time I saw y'all perform, so this is a dance collective that you founded with, there's 4 of y'all in total, but the first time I saw y'all perform, I cried. I felt seen. Oh, I'm getting emotional now. Whoo! I'm
like, let me hear
it. Come through. Because as a brown body dancing, seeing 4 brown bodies dancing and doing work that is so, for me, so important for the dance world, right? I just was beside myself, and I was inspired, and I was moved, and I was titillated and invigorated, and all these things, all the aids.
I love it. I love it.
To see that y'all were a thing. So can you talk a little more about Primera and what you are, how you started, and all that goodness?
Definitely. No, and thank you so much for your palabras, your kind words. I appreciate that, because that is like one of our biggest missions, is to like create and catalyze those reactions, right? Because we came together. So before we even came together, right? When I entered grad school, I had one of those aha moments too there, right? And I feel like particularly like as like, first generation brown people, we want to continuously have these moments where like, I didn't know I could do that, right? Because a lot of times, right, we're sort of ingrained and controlled and told what to do in order to be like good citizens, right? Or good dancers or good artists. And so that I love having those moments of like, I didn't know I could do that. And so I had that moment when I went into grad school and I saw Rosa Rodriguez Frazier, right, who is now like, my hermana, who forms a part of Primera Generación Dance Collective. And she was mixing Mexican traditional banda dancing with a modern contemporary, right? So she was putting those two together. She was completing her MFA at UC Riverside. And I had the opportunity to dance in her piece and dance in her work. And I was like, oh, this feels so right on my body in so many different ways, right? Like grooving how I, groove to banda, and then like diving into the modern contemporary that I also have come to love, right? Love and hate, right? And so allowing those to sort of live within my body. So first seeing her do that and just being like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. And 2, being moved by it. And then 3, getting to dive into the work in dance for her, sort of embodying that and realizing like, wow, this is something that I love and want to do and continue to do. So then we fast forward, she completes her MFA, and my partner, Alfonso Cervera, comes into UC Riverside to complete his master's in fine arts. And he gets an opportunity to do work out in Los Angeles. And so he's at UC Riverside there at the time. It was me and Patricia Patti Huerta, who's the 4th member of Primera Generación. And he was entering his first year. And Rosa had already graduated, but he brought all of us together. So he was just like, how can we create something? At first, we didn't know what we were creating. We were just like, 4 individual artists, right? Who were just like, I have my own aesthetic, you have your own aesthetic, you have your own aesthetic, right? Because unfortunately, sometimes I think that happens in dance too, where we're trained to be individual artists, right? To get your name out there, because it's not a communal thing, right? It's more so like, how are you gonna get your name out there? And so we came into the space together, and we started playing. And when we started playing, we always spoke with each other bilingually in English and in Spanish. Talking about our everyday lived experiences as first generation students. And so then that slowly developed into sort of this random work that we created called Cambio. And we presented Cambio at out in Los Angeles. And we decided to do that because we had all sort of had a talk with each other, and we're just like, damn, like the LA contemporary dancing is so white. Like we love it, we go see it, but we don't see ourselves on stage. We don't see our family on stage. We don't see our family in the audience, right? Like it is a very specific audience who has access, who goes to these things. And that audience goes to these things because of these sort of like the dances and the dancers that are on stage, right? So it was important for us to sort of flip the script and bring our culture and our identity into how we created work. So because of that, we decided to fuse in, speaking in English and in Spanish while we were moving, right? Because as sort of minoritarian bodies it was important for us to sort of not just have audience see our bodies move, but also hear us talk, right? That we were just like, sometimes it's those moments where like audience gets to sort of put what they want on your body, and they mark your body and they read your body based off of their assumptions. But sometimes like it's like we also have to add the text in there to be like, no, like it's a bit more like this, right? So then we slowly decided, we were just like, let's make this a thing. And it's important to make this a thing because when we got response from a couple of members in the audience, we had Yanina Orellana, who was from Guadalajara, Mexico, and she was just like, this is brilliant, this is beautiful. Like I haven't seen something like this in LA, right? And she's also like, I want to, she was also working on something similar too. So we're just like, yes, like this is what we need more of in, LA, especially because LA is like, there's a major Latinx community out there. And so how is it that we're also getting those people to come to these shows, right? And so then slowly that's how the work has developed, right? The work has developed out of sort of showcasing and performing our Mexican American identities and what comes with that, and storytelling, and also visibilizing the harsh realities that come with that, visibilizing the harsh realities that come with our parents' migration stories, right? And all of sort of the experiences taking place for brown folk across the U.S.-Mexico border too.
Yeah. Oh, and that's a beautiful segue. So you have been very generous and have allowed us to connect at the end of our discussion here, Nepantla, which is a piece that y'all did. I first experienced that piece as a film, which you recently did. And let me tell you, that connection, that not only because I relate, because of the cultura, because of the culture, but just the way the film was made, as just that, like formally as a piece of art, was stunning, stunningly filmed, beautifully edited and everything. And then to see this other iteration that you're providing for us today on stage, it is a much different, it's like a whole different piece, right? It's the same piece, but it's a whole different piece.
Yeah.
And still really like provoke so many thoughts and emotions. And once again, this like being seen and making me face things that I didn't want to as a brown body, but I knew I needed to as a brown body, right? So can you speak a little more to like, first of all, what is Nepantla?
Definitely, right?
Yeah.
So Nepantla comes because I, at the time, right, I was researching Quebradita and sort of this back and forth crossing between dancers across the US-Mexico border, right? So because of that, a lot of my scholarship is influenced by Chicanx, Chicano, Chicana studies, right? And a lot of those scholars that come from there, particularly Gloria and Saldúa, right? Who has her theorization of Nepantla, Nepantleras, right? And that's like a tongue twister right there. And how it basically is this liminal state where you're in, right? This in-between space, right? And so she sort of contextualizes it as ways in which sort of mestizo, mestiza, mestisex bodies cultivate themselves by having to go through this in-between space, right? That the in-between space sometimes is actually not a pretty space, right? It's a hard space. Like you will cry tears, right? But you have to go through it in order to find yourself, right? And once you reach sort of Nepantla, right, you or have been able to detach yourselves from yourself from like these tethered bindings that sort of marginalize us to produce a more sort of agent self, right? And so it was important for us to sort of cultivate Nepantla as the in-between state, right? What does the in-between state taste like? What does the in-between state feel like? What does it move like? What does it look like, right? What does it sound like? And so originally we had constructed it as a stage version. We wanted it to eventually, and we're still, that's still the goal, to turn it into like a full evening length work. And so what it was a combination of a couple of past pieces we had done with new sort of elements embedded into it. And we premiered it at San Francisco's Festival of Latin American Contemporary Choreographers. And that is the version that you all are getting to see. And so it comes out of one that sort of in-between messiness, right, which we describe as desmadre. So this idea of desmadre being in Spanish, right, both good and bad connotations, right? Your mom can go into your room and say like, your room is dirty, it's a desmadre, right? It is a mess, right? And so, but you can also go with your friends somewhere and you're like, if the party was like happening and the party was, like hitting every bone in your body, and you say like, esa fiesta fue un desmadre, right? Like that party was like the best ever, right? And so it was important for us to sort of dive into that duality of like the beauty in brown joy, the messiness of brown joy, the brown loss, right? Brown suffering, and how that all comes together in different ways, right? And so we also work through rascuache play, right? Rascuachismo, coming from Tomás Ibarra Frausto, who sort of defines it as this aesthetic of los de abajo, or people from below, who sort of take whatever they can and create a DIY project, a DIY aesthetic of that is sort of a counterculture, right? That goes against like dominant notions of like purity and dominant notions of like what pretty is, right? So we wanted to sort of dive into like mishmashing it all together and creating a desmadre, right? And so that's why we have embedded into it like things coming from the ways in which people are stereotyped through Cinco de Mayo, ways in which you have children detained at the US-Mexico border, right? And not just detained, but like in very sort of violent conditions. We also go into, right, moments of play, how we play with one another as Mexican-American individuals, right? And so that's what Nepantla sort of is. It's a mishmash of all of like rascuache play, but it's also desmadre, and it's also visibilizing harsh realities, but visibilizing beauty, and also sort of getting the audience to think, right? Think about what it means to be Mexican, think about what it means to be Mexican-American, how you can be an ally, and how things are coded in the piece for specific people who can access it in certain ways, right? And so it's been beautiful, right? Working with Primera Generación has also allowed us to be like, wow, like my family is in the audience, like my tios, my tias, right? Because like they wouldn't have come to places like, Red Cat in LA prior to like us being there, right? And so yeah, that's been the beautiful part of it as well.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, you pretty much hit on everything I was going to ask about the piece. And I also don't want to give too much away because I do want our viewers to just, watch it and experience it. We are getting ready to wrap up because, we're coming to the end. But if there's anything else you would like to say regarding just your experiences, your practice, you as an educator, I definitely want to give you that opportunity as well. So I'll just open that up to you now.
Definitely. Thank you for letting me have my Beyonce moment with my. No, thank you so much for that. Yeah, definitely. I feel like so right now, right, we are going to have a screening of Nepantla film, right? So what everybody's gonna first get to see at Saddleback is the stage version, right, which eventually leads to this film. And the reason that we created this film, right, was because we originally got accepted to perform it again on a stage, but here in Southern California, because we performed it up in the Bay. But then COVID hit, and so we had to get really creative, right? We had to get real rascuache with it. Like, how can we make something with what we have, right? So then we turned it into a film, and then the film sort of also, like you said, has its own entity and identity. And so if you are all sort of, excited to see it in its film version, we'll be premiering again the film, or not premiering, but showing the film again April 28th, with details to come soon for that. And then, for my own practice right now, I'm definitely living in this exploration of how is it that we can continuously reflect on, defining and providing and creating equity for different bodies in the arts, right? Particularly in the arts. One, I think I'm such a huge advocate for the fact that like queer, trans, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, people of color, bodies are so important as educators, right? That if you are in college right now and you identify as one of those things, that we need you in academia, right? That we need you to come in and like flip the script, right? Because you matter, right? These bodies matter to, one, change the field, and I'm talking about dance, right? Because dance still being very Eurocentric, right? We need to change it. We need to have more programs that have like things like salsa and cumbia and West African and all of these amazing things, house dancing, right? And so how is it that we do that? We do that by training a future youth, future generation to take on that task of expanding everything. So that's where I'm sort of at right now, and also just redefining what pedagogy means, what teaching means. I am working on turning one of my chapters into an article, so hopefully it'll come out soon, which will be on same-sex queer Quebradita dancing. And that's where I'm at, just basically as my own self. And also trying to find times to have, a little margarita every now and then.
Because self-care is important.
Self-care is where it's at. Yeah. If I'm learning anything from Gen Z, it is about self-care.
There you go, right? Alrighty, Dr. Gonzalez, it has been a pleasure. It has been truly an honor and really a gift. I cannot thank you enough for carving time out of your day and your busy schedule, for being so open and generous with your words, with your offerings. I personally appreciate it a lot. And I know Saddleback College as a campus and our greater community definitely appreciates it. So thank you so much. Round of applause for you. If this was a podcast or a radio show, this is where I would hit like the yay button and woo.
Yeah, like the little buttons with the different sounds.
Exactly.
No, thank you so much. Thank you to the college and thank you to the students for having me and for allowing me to share a little bit more of Primera Generación Dance Collective with you on my, perspectives and outlook on life.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Please feel free to reach out to me personally if you have any questions. Once again, my name is Steve Rosa. My email is srosa@saddleback.edu. Or just find me. Yeah, come take class with any one of us here in the dance department. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for being here with us and have a wonderful day. Thank you.